Have you ever wondered if a simple piece of paper, just a small, folded note, could change the fate of two people forever? Imagine this. You walk into a small, unassuming cafe on a rainy Tuesday morning. The air smells of freshly ground coffee beans, the windows are fogged, and the chatter inside is low and familiar. You're just another customer. At least that's what they think. But you're not. You're a billionaire, hiding in plain sight, and nobody here knows. Nobody except for one sharp-eyed waitress who notices something no one else dares to see, and she slips you a note that stops you cold. That's exactly where the story begins. The man in question was named Alexander Royce, or at least that's what his business card said when he was in the boardroom. But today, dressed in a faded navy hoodie and a pair of jeans that looked like they'd been bought at a discount store years ago, he was simply Alex. His plan was simple. Blend in, order coffee, and watch. For weeks now, rumors had been swirling that one of his smaller subsidiaries, a coffee supply chain he had acquired 2 years earlier, was struggling not because of market conditions, but because of corruption at the managerial level. Money disappearing, staff morale plummeting, high turnover, and most damning of all, whispers of racial discrimination toward black employees. Alex had dealt with corporate snakes before, but this was different. This wasn't just about losing profits. This was about losing the soul of a company he'd built from scratch. He could send in auditors, sure, but people lied to auditors. They put on their best faces? No, he needed the truth. And truth, he learned, came out in the quiet corners of everyday life. That's why he was here, in one of the company's chain cafes in a working-class neighborhood, sitting at a wobbly table near the window as the rain tapped against the glass. From the moment he walked in, Alex noticed her. Her name was Maya Carter. She moved with the kind of tired grace you only saw in people who had been working far too long without a break. Her black curls were tied back under a navy visor, her apron was neatly tied, and despite the shadows of fatigue under her eyes, she wore a genuine smile for every customer. It was the kind of smile you couldn't fake for long if you didn't mean it. When she came to take his order, Alex noticed something else. Her eyes, sharp, observant, almost as if she were reading more than just the drink he wanted. "Medium black coffee, please," he said, his voice casual, low. "Sure thing," Maya replied, jotting it down quickly even though she could have made that order in her sleep. "Name for the cup?" He almost said Alex, but something in her tone made him pause. "Just A." She nodded, but he caught the faintest flicker in her gaze, as if she recognized him. Impossible, he thought. No one here should know his face. That was the point. Alex took a seat and pretended to scroll through his phone. Out of the corner of his eye, he watched Maya work. She wasn't just serving coffee, she was navigating something. Her interactions with the other staff seemed careful, almost guarded. When the manager, a tall man with a smug smirk and a shirt that looked a little too expensive for a cafe job, walked out from the back, she straightened immediately, avoiding eye contact. Alex's gut tightened. He knew that posture. It was the kind of posture employees wore when they worked under fear. And then it happened. When Maya brought his coffee over, she placed it on the table with a practiced smile. But her hand lingered a second longer than necessary, her fingers brushing the edge of his cup. In that brief moment, something slipped under the cardboard sleeve. A folded piece of paper. She didn't say a word. She just walked away, serving the next table as though nothing had happened. Alex's pulse quickened. It could be a complaint. It could be a cry for help. It could even be a threat. He waited until no one was looking, then slowly slid the note from under the sleeve and opened it beneath the table. 7 words, that's all it said. "Don't trust the man in the back." That was it. No name, no details. Just a warning. And Alex felt his stomach drop. Because in his line of work, 7 words like that could mean the difference between catching a snake and becoming its next victim. Now, I don't know about you, but here's where my mind goes. If someone risks slipping you a secret note in their workplace, you better believe they've got something worth losing. People don't gamble like that for nothing. Alex folded the note, tucking it into his pocket. His billionaire instincts told him to play it cool. If Maya suspected the manager of wrongdoing, she wouldn't have chosen him at random. Did she recognize him after all? Or was she just desperate enough to take a chance on a stranger who looked like he might listen? One thing was certain. He wasn't leaving this cafe until he understood exactly what the man in the back was hiding, and that was how a rainy Tuesday morning coffee run turned into the start of one of the most dangerous undercover investigations Alexander Royce had ever taken on. If you were in Alex's shoes at that moment, what would you do? Would you stand up and confront the man in the back right then and there, possibly blowing your cover? Or would you sit still, play along, and dig deeper? Alex chose the second option. He had learned long ago that the most dangerous people often smiled the widest. The manager in question soon emerged from the back again, talking to one of the baristas in a hushed but sharp tone. Alex studied him closely. The guy was in his late 30s, tall with slick back hair and a gold watch that didn't match the modest cafe uniform. His name tag read Brad, but the confidence in his stride told Alex this man thought he owned the place. If not legally, then through fear. Brad didn't look at customers the way a service worker should. His eyes scanned the room like a security guard looking for trouble. When his gaze landed on Alex, there was a flicker, almost like he was sizing him up. Alex sipped his coffee, letting the bitter warmth ground him while his mind ran through scenarios. The note from Maya was still in his pocket, the edges pressing against his fingers like a reminder. Don't trust the man in the back. From the corner of his eye, Alex saw Maya pass Brad, her body stiff as if she were trying not to breathe too loudly. Brad said something under his breath, and though Alex couldn't hear the words, he didn't like the way Maya's shoulders tensed. She gave a quick, almost mechanical nod and walked away without making eye contact. That was enough for Alex. He decided he'd stay a while, long enough to see how this place really worked. He had nowhere else to be today. The whole point of going undercover was to blend into the background until people forgot he was there. So he ordered another coffee, then a pastry, and then another refill. All the while he kept observing. The more he watched, the more cracks he noticed. One of the baristas, a young Latino guy named Luis, seemed to be working twice as hard as everyone else, while Brad kept vanishing into the back office with his phone glued to his ear. The cash register opened far more often than necessary, and once Alex spotted Brad slipping something, maybe cash, into his own pocket. Now I have to pause here and say, if you've ever worked a minimum wage job, you know that the people in charge can sometimes be the worst offenders. It's not always about incompetence. Sometimes it's about greed. And greed has a way of rotting a place from the inside out. Around noon, the lunch rush began. The cafe filled with customers, the noise level rising, steam hissing from the espresso machines. Maya moved like clockwork, balancing trays, smiling at customers, remembering orders without even glancing at her notepad. Alex could see the exhaustion in her eyes, but she never let it touch her smile. Then something happened that made Alex's jaw tighten. A customer, a middle-aged white woman in a tailored coat, walked in, glanced around, and made a beeline for the counter. Brad greeted her with exaggerated warmth, leaning over the counter as if they were old friends. But when Maya approached to help, the woman's expression changed instantly. "I'd rather he take my order," she said, nodding toward Brad. Brad gave a smug little smile, turned to Maya and said loudly enough for half the cafe to hear, "Why don't you bust some tables instead?" Maya froze for just a second before nodding and stepping back. No argument, no visible anger, but Alex saw it, the flash of hurt, the quiet humiliation. And here's where I have to say, people think racism is always loud, always obvious. But often it's in the small moments, the subtle exclusions, the little humiliations that add up day after day until they break you. Alex knew then that Maya's note wasn't just about money disappearing. Something uglier was happening here. He decided to act, not directly, yet, but by getting closer to Maya. When things quieted down after the lunch rush, he walked up to the counter where she was wiping it down. "Coffee's good here," he said casually. She gave a polite smile. "Glad you like it." "You've been here long?" he asked. "Long enough," she said, her tone deliberately vague. Alex leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "I read your note." For a moment, her hand stopped moving. She didn't look up. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You do," Alex said gently. And I think you're right, but I need more. Her eyes flicked to Brad, who was once again in the back office, door half shut. It's not safe to talk here, she murmured. If you're really serious, come back at closing. Alex nodded. I will. As he walked back to his table, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. In his pocket, the note felt heavier now. Closing time was hours away, and he had to make sure Brad didn't suspect a thing. By the time the clock struck 8 and the cafe emptied out, the rain had stopped outside. The smell of coffee lingered in the air, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Maya locked the front door, glanced over her shoulder at the back office, and then motioned for Alex to follow her toward the side exit. That's when he realized this was about to be bigger than he thought. The side alley behind the cafe was dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. The hum of the city seemed muted here, as if this narrow passage had been forgotten by the world. Alex stepped out into the damp air, his shoes crunching on scattered gravel. Maya was already there, leaning against the brick wall, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She looked both exhausted and nervous, her eyes scanning the alley as if making sure no one had followed them. Thanks for coming, she said quietly. Alex nodded. You made it sound urgent. It is, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a beat of silence. Alex didn't push. He knew people needed space to open up. Finally, Maya took a deep breath and began. That man in the back, Brad, he's not just a bad manager. He's stealing from the store, skimming cash, manipulating the books, overcharging suppliers and pocketing the difference. I've seen it, but that's not all. Her voice cracked slightly on the last part, and she looked down at the wet pavement. Alex could see her knuckles turning white where she gripped her arms. What else? He asked, keeping his tone steady. He targets people, she said, mostly employees of color. He gives us the worst shifts, cuts our hours for no reason, and when customers act racist, he just lets it happen. Sometimes he encourages it. I have to say, hearing that made my stomach knot. Because it's one thing to steal money from a business, it's another thing entirely to steal people's dignity, day after day. That kind of damage doesn't show up on a balance sheet, but it can break a person faster than any financial loss. Alex listened without interrupting. I tried going to HR, Maya continued, but they're in his pocket. They tell me I'm too sensitive, or that I'm imagining things. And if I push harder, she hesitated, glancing around again. People who speak up don't last here. They get written up for fake reasons, then fired. I'm the only one left who's willing to talk. And now, she trailed off, shaking her head. Now you're afraid you'll be next, Alex finished for her. She nodded slowly. I didn't know who else to trust. You came in today and I don't know. You look like you'd actually listen. That struck Alex more than he expected. In his corporate world, people saw him as a decision maker, a powerhouse. But here, in this alley, he was just a man someone believed might listen, and maybe that was more important. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Maya, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not just some guy who likes coffee. I own the company that owns this cafe. Her eyes widened, and for a second she just stared at him, as if trying to decide whether he was serious. You're my boss's boss's boss? Something like that, he said with a faint smile. And I came here today because I've heard rumors about places like this in my chain. But hearing it from you, seeing it, that's different. It makes it real. Maya's expression shifted from shock to a strange mix of relief and disbelief. So you can fix this? Yes, Alex said firmly, but I need proof. Enough that no one can bury it or spin it. Her brow furrowed. Proof won't be easy. Brad's careful. That's why we'll have to be careful too, Alex replied. Now here's the thing about moments like this. The choice to act is never just about courage. It's about trust. Maya had just risked her job, maybe even her safety, to tell him the truth. And Alex knew he couldn't ask her to take that risk unless he was willing to back her all the way. I can get you proof, Maya said finally, her voice steady now. But you'll have to give me time, and you can't come back here. Brad will get suspicious. Alex nodded. Then we'll meet somewhere else, somewhere safe. They exchanged a quick plan, A diner across town, 2 nights from now, after her shift. She'd bring whatever she could gather. Before they parted, Maya hesitated. Why are you doing this? I mean, you're a billionaire. You could just fire everyone and hire new people. Alex's eyes softened. Because if I just fire people without understanding the problem, I'll never fix the system that let it happen. And because people like Brad count on folks like you not having a voice, that's not how I run my business. For the first time, Maya smiled. Not the polite smile she wore for customers, but a real one. All right, she said, let's do this. They shook hands, and Alex felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not the kind that came from closing a big deal or seeing a stock price climb, but the kind that came from standing on the right side of something that mattered. As he walked away from the cafe that night, the streets slick with rain, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he just stepped into something far bigger than corporate misconduct. This was personal now, and if Brad thought he could keep playing his game without consequences, he was about to learn the hard way just how wrong he was. 2 nights later, the diner across town buzzed with low chatter and the smell of sizzling bacon. Alex sat in a corner booth, facing the door, the brim of his baseball cap pulled low. He checked his watch. 8:47 p.m. She was late. Just as he started to wonder if something had gone wrong, Maya walked in. Her hair was damp from the drizzle outside, and she clutched a small tote bag tightly against her side. She slid into the booth opposite him, her eyes scanning the room before settling on his. You made it, Alex said quietly. I almost didn't, she admitted. Brad's been watching me, more than usual. Alex's jaw tightened. You got what we need? Maya nodded and opened the tote. Inside were a small stack of receipts, a phone, and a battered notebook. These are copies of receipts that don't match the register reports. And this, she handed him the phone. It's video. I set up a hidden camera near the register. You can see Brad taking money and slipping it into his pocket. There's audio too. Alex scrolled through the files, his pulse quickening. It was damning. Exactly what they needed. But then Maya leaned in, her voice dropping. There's more. I think Brad's got someone higher up protecting him. That's why HR ignores complaints. I overheard him on the phone last night, talking about keeping the supply deal quiet. I don't know about you, but when someone says keeping it quiet, my first thought is, whatever they're hiding, it's big enough to blow everything up. Alex took a deep breath. If that's true, this goes deeper than I thought, and it means we have to move fast. Maya's eyes hardened. So what's the plan? The plan, Alex said, is to hit them where they can't spin it. Publicly. But we need one more thing. A live, undeniable moment that shows everyone what's going on. Maya hesitated. That's risky. It is, Alex agreed, but Brad's already suspicious. If we wait too long, he'll destroy the evidence, and you'll be out of a job. We need to force his hand. By the time they left the diner, the plan was in motion. Maya would bait Brad into making a public scene, while Alex, still undercover, would be there to witness and record it. If everything went right, Brad's arrogance would be his undoing. What Alex didn't know yet was that Brad was already planning something of his own. The next afternoon, Maya arrived for her shift with a knot in her stomach. She'd barely slept. Every instinct told her that Brad had caught on to her somehow. His eyes followed her more than usual, his smirk sharper, like he was just waiting for her to slip up. Alex, dressed in his now familiar hoodie and jeans, slipped into the cafe a little after lunch. He ordered his coffee from Luis, the young barista, and took his usual seat by the window. From where he sat, Alex watched Maya set the trap. She deliberately made small mistakes in front of Brad, ringing up an order wrong, taking a bit longer to clean a table. Nothing huge, just enough to irritate him. And Brad took the bait. By 4 p.m., the cafe was half full when it happened. Brad stormed out from the back, slamming a clipboard onto the counter. Maya, he barked. Every head in the cafe turned. You think I don't see what you're doing? You're lazy, you're careless, and frankly, you're lucky I haven't fired you already. Maya kept her voice calm. I've been doing my job, Brad. Maybe you should look at your own. Don't you dare talk back to me, Brad snapped, stepping closer. People like you should be grateful to even have a job here. That was it. That was the moment Alex had been waiting for. He pulled out his phone and started recording, capturing Brad's voice loud and clear. Gasps rippled through the cafe. Luis stepped forward, trying to intervene, but Brad shoved him back. "Stay out of this," he yelled. Then in the middle of his rant, Brad made his fatal mistake. He reached into the register, pulled out a wad of cash, and stuffed it into his pocket, right there in front of everyone. The cafe went dead silent. And then Alex stood up. "That's enough." Brad turned, ready to snap at the random customer interfering, until he froze. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "You?" he stammered. Alex stepped forward, pulling back his hood. "Alexander Royce. I own this company, and you're done." For a moment, Brad just stood there, his face draining of color. The customers began murmuring, phones out, recording every second. Maya's eyes widened, not with fear this time, but with something like vindication. This is a setup," Brad sputtered. "You can't just—" "Oh, I can," Alex interrupted, his voice calm but cold. "I have you on video stealing from the register. I have employee testimonies. And thanks to your little outburst just now, I have witnesses. You've not only violated company policy, you've broken the law." Brad's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Finally, he turned toward the door, as if making a break for it. But he didn't get far. Two uniformed police officers were already walking in, called by Luis the moment Brad started yelling. "Bradley Kent?" one officer asked. Brad glared. "What's this about?" "You're under arrest for embezzlement and harassment," the officer said, reading him his rights. The cafe erupted into whispers as Brad was handcuffed and let out. Alex turned to Maya. "You're not just keeping your job, you're getting promoted. And I'm personally making sure every location in this company gets a full audit. No more Brads." Maya blinked, her composure finally cracking into a relieved smile. "Thank you." But Alex shook his head. Thank you. You had the courage to speak when others stayed silent. That's worth more than any corporate title. Now, I've got to say, watching someone like Brad face the consequences isn't just satisfying. It's necessary, because it sends a message. No matter how untouchable someone thinks they are, truth has a way of catching up. In the weeks that followed, the video went viral. Customers flooded social media with praise for Maya, calling her a hero. Other employees across the company began speaking up, emboldened by her example. And Alex? He went back to being the man in the hoodie when he wanted to see the truth. Because that's the thing about going undercover. You don't just find problems. You find the people worth fighting for. Sometimes all it takes is a folded note under a coffee sleeve to start a revolution.